Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. So, I am Adam Anan. I'm a student of class 11th F from a humanities section. I am currently doing an internship with LearnIvio as a sales and marketing intern till the end of this month. So, LearnIvio is an edtech company and a personalized online learning platform. Their faculty are ex-HODs from Fiji, Akash, and Bansal. They teach in tailored batches of 8. Also, they take free trial classes and diagnostic classes for interested students. You can view more features of them on www.learnavio.com. Today's session will be taken by Mr. Saeed Azam Hussain, the CEO and co-founder of LearnAvio, has completed his BSc Physics from Delhi University. He has further earned his master's and PhD in theoretical physics from Jamia Millia Islamia University. His expertise thus revolves around academics and teaching. He has been active in the industry for nearly 2 decades and has mentored thousands of students. He had previously co-founded the Orchard Institute for Engineering, NEET 10th, 12th coaching in Delhi. He worked as the chief of academics in the organization. Currently, Mr. Azam is planning and utilizing the emerging online learning platform to deliver the finest quality of education to his students. His venture has connected some of the most experienced teachers from institutions like IITs and AIMS to help his students clear the competitive examinations thoroughly well and reach their highest academic successes. Further, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Azam.
Thank you, Madan. Thank you for the introduction. So I think I should start this session now. See, this session is a part of the public lecture that we used to give in our PhD during our PhD days. So the public lecture means we target the audience as they're not from the physics background. We expect they don't have the background knowledge of physics and cosmology. So I will try to make it very simple. The terms that I will be using here are the one which you are familiar in your class 9th and 10th syllabus. Okay. So let's start this thing. So this slide basically, yeah, this slide will show you the level or the scale at which we will do the things. Like when we talk about cosmos, cosmos simply means everything, right from an insect to the size of the observed universe. Each and everything that you can think of is cosmos. Insects, human beings, planets, stars, galaxies, constellations, each and everything that you can think of are a part of cosmos only. So the very 2 to 5 seconds video, this will show you the size of the cosmos, like the scale at which we study cosmos. So it starts with the insect, then it goes to the planet, then we have solar system, then we have our galaxy Milky Way, then we can move further. Like if we keep on increasing the scale, like from planet we goes to solar system, then we goes to galaxy, it's a Milky Way, then there are millions, hundreds and thousands of galaxies, they combine to form a clusters, then we have hundreds and thousands of clusters, they combine to form a supercluster, then we have millions of superclusters that combine to form the observed universe. That's the scale, size scale that we will talk about. So this is the Milky Way galaxy. This is basically the supercluster. Now these each and every, like the things that you can see here, the things that you can see here, these are galaxies, bunch of galaxies in these superclusters. So these are superclusters, the heaviest, or you can say the biggest gravitational size that you can observe is a supercluster. That have millions of galaxies here. These all are galaxies. These are clusters of galaxies. So the study of cosmology deals with galaxies, like galaxy clusters and the superclusters. So this is just a brief introduction of the size scale that we'll be talking about. Okay, now to understand these concepts, to understand this evolution of the whole cosmos, you should know these basic things. These will be the points, the terminologies that I'll be using in the discussion. The first one is space. When we talk about space, you can define space as an XYZ coordinate axis. It could be a three-dimensional space, or in a very simple language, the space is, you know that what is matter? Matter is something that occupies space. So whatever you have around you, it's space. You can move forward and backward in space. The mathematical way to define the space is coordinate systems. You must have done in your junior classes. When you draw graph, you have X coordinate, you have Y coordinate. If you're sitting in a room, then you can see the three coordinates in your room. Two coordinates on the floor, and the third coordinate is the height of the room. So that is all space that you have. Now, this space is also created during the evolution of the universe. Before the evolution of the universe, there was nothing like space. Then we have time. See, what is time? Time is something that your clock shows. I won't go in the much detail of time. But in this presentation, in this session, we will travel through time. We will travel backward and the forward in time. Then you have energy. What is energy? Energy is the ability to create all spaces, all time, all type of matters, all type of radiations that we have today was created 14 billion years ago through energy. So everything that we have now was created through energy. Then you must have heard about electrons and protons. You have electrons up to class 9th? Please answer in chat room. Huh? Let's make it a bit interactive. You all know about electrons? Okay, you all know about electrons. Very good. So electrons are subatomic particles. If you have an atom, very good. So atoms have protons and neutrons inside the nucleus, and around this nucleus, the electrons are evolving around it. Today, we will see how nucleus came into existence, how nucleus was created 14 billion years ago. Then we have already talked about protons, positively charged particles. You already know what are atoms, the smallest building blocks. These are the building blocks of any elements. Quarks, I think these are the new topics. Quarks is basically, if you break a proton, you can break a proton into a number of quarks. If you take a proton and if I break this proton, then I can break this proton into 3 quarks. If I take a neutron and I break this neutron, then I can break these neutrons into 3 quarks. So what usually happens is 3 quarks combine to form a proton, or 3 quarks combine to form an electron. Is it clear up to quarks? Okay, if you have any doubt, feel free to ask. Okay, it's a discussion, it's not just a lecture series, just a discussion. Just stop me and ask wherever you have issues. At the end of this session, you will start appreciating your syllabus, your maths and your science syllabus. Whatever you are learning in your class 9th and 10th, that's directly applicable to the cosmos. Okay, the next is wavelength. So what is wavelength? Wavelength is just the length of the wave. Wavelength is simply the length of the wave. So if you take a wave, yeah, Ankit, quarks are the building block of protons and neutrons. Electrons cannot be further divided. Electrons are indivisible. But when you have protons and neutrons, you can further divide your proton. You can break your proton. When you break your proton, you will get 3 quarks. When you break your electron, you will get 3 quarks. So the quarks are the building blocks of protons and neutrons. The 3 protons combine and form a proton. 3 quarks combine and form a proton. 3 neutrons combine and form a proton. So protons is not indivisible. It can be further divided out. Neutrons are not indivisible. That can be further divided out. But electrons are simply indivisible quantities. Yes, Ankit. Am I clear now? The next is, wavelength. Wavelength is length of a wave. Okay, just give me the name of some waves that you have heard about. Up to class 8, class 9, you know what are waves. Give me some examples of waves. Quick. Just type the examples of few waves. Radio waves, very good. Sound waves, perfect. More examples. More examples. Sound waves, radio waves, light waves, right? We have X waves, light, yes. We have ultraviolet, we have cosmic waves, we have microwaves, waves that we use in a microwave oven, microwaves. Very good, Aryan, gamma waves. These are examples of waves. So if I draw a wave, this is how we draw a wave, right? The length of the wave is its wavelength. Saksham, alpha are not waves, alpha are particles. Gamma are particles. Sorry, beta are particles, gamma are waves. So when you draw a wave, usually we draw a wave in this way. Although this is again a topic of discussion, then we can't see waves. We can't see sound waves. We can't see light waves. We can't see cosmic waves. But when we draw waves in this way. This is something that you should think. Like, if we can't view sound waves, then how can we draw the picture of sound waves in this way? When we can't view microwaves, then how can we draw the picture of the microwaves in this way? That's the first question, takeaway question. Think about it. If the waves are not visible, sound waves are not at all visible, then how can we draw the picture of waves? Whenever you think about sound wave, just type in Google, you will see this is the picture of sound wave. From where this picture came, that's the first question. You should think about it. Okay, the length of the wave is wavelength. That's it. Basically, whatever you have around you can be divided into two parts. It can be either a particle or it can be a wave. Particles have few characteristics. The first characteristic is, if you have particle, it will have mass. Although there are few examples of particles which don't have mass, but broadly, when we talk about particle have mass. That's the first thing. Waves may or may not have mass. Particles occupy space. Waves may or may not occupy space. So for particles, we study mass of particle. When we talk about waves, we study the wavelength of waves. So just like mass, wavelength is one characteristic of wave. Let's see, what do you mean by redshift? Okay, when let's talk about light waves, from violet to red. See, these are just key points. I will come to the main topic in few seconds. Let's talk about the visible light, web cure. But you should know these terms to understand the whole lecture. Can you tell me, when I go from violet to red, what happens with the wavelength? The wavelength is constant, or it's increasing, or it's decreasing? When I move from violet to red in this way, what happens with the wavelength? It remains constant, it increases, or it decreases? Just compare. Very good, Saksham. More answers? Good. So when we move from violet to red, the wavelength increases. So when the wavelength increases, then we use a very general terminology in physics, that's the redshift. Redshift means wavelength is increasing. Blue shift means wavelength is decreasing. So let's make this point very clear. Whenever I will use redshift in the lecture, that means wavelength is increasing. When I say blue shift, that means wavelength is decreasing. I'm giving you an example. Just tell me whether it's an example of redshift or blue shift. The initial wavelength of a light wave, let's say you have a star. Some light waves are coming from the star. The light waves which are coming from the star have a wavelength of, let's say, 3000 angstrom. Angstrom is a unit for which we use to measure length. Then the final wavelength of the light wave, like you observe a star with a telescope today, its wavelength of the light coming from the star is this. Then you observe the same star after, let's say, 10 years. Then you see that the wavelength is 4000 angstrom now. So I'm repeating again, redshift means wavelength increases. Blue shift means wavelength decreases. All right, very good. So wavelength is increasing, that means it's redshift. Wavelength is increasing, that means it's redshift. Very good. Remember one more thing. If a star move away from you, then its wavelength will increase. From this data, you can conclude that the star is moving away from you. So redshift means the star is moving away from you. That's the redshift. Redshift means wavelength is increasing. That's redshift only. Next, we have helium. Decreasing of wavelength is blue shift. So if wavelength decreases, that means moving towards the blue part of the spectrum. We call it as blue shift. Helium, I'm sure you know what is helium. Helium is the second element in the periodic table. It has 2 protons and 2 electrons. Its atomic number is 2. I'm sure you know how much is speed of light. Speed of light is 3 into 10 raised power 8 meter per second. This is the maximum permissible speed of any object. Speed of light, 3 into 10 raised power 8 meter per second. That's the maximum limit on speed. No object can have speed which is greater than the speed of light. Radiation. Radiation means all waves else than sound waves. Light waves, basically electromagnetic waves are known as radiation. I'm giving you examples of radiation. Light waves is radiation. Microwave, X-rays, cosmic waves, gamma rays, all these are examples of radiation. Then we have matter. Else than wave, whatever you have around yourself is a matter. Atom is a part of matter. You have elements, a part of matter. Planets, stars, galaxies, all matter. Then came the last term, baryon. Baryons are basically ordinary matter. The matter which you see around yourself, human beings, baryons. Planets, baryons. Stars, baryons. Galaxies, baryons. The ordinary matter that you can think of, that you can see is baryon. Human beings, baryons. Animals, baryons. Baryons are basically obtained from protons and neutrons. So these are the terms that I'll be using. Is it clear, all these terms? We'll be using this in the presentation. Perfect. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, that's the next term. So these are the further terminologies that I'll be using here. Planets, you know what are planets. Stars, the billions of stars in a galaxy. Then this is a galaxy. A galaxy consists of, just a minute. Yes. A galaxy consists, I'm just showing you the scale, the size scale that we are talking about. It's so huge that it's not easy to imagine the size scale that we are talking about. So I'm just giving you an idea of the scale that we will be dealing. Planets, you know the size of Earth, Jupiter, Saturn. Stars, galaxies, you have 400 billion stars and 100 to 400 billion stars in the galaxy. The size of a star can be larger than the size of the Earth. The size of sun is type of star. Its size is very, very large as compared to the size of Earth. A galaxy typical galaxy have 100 to 400 billion stars. A galaxy cluster, this have 100 to 1000 galaxies. Then you have a galaxy supercluster, this have around 40,000 galaxies. Then this is our observed universe, 10 million supercluster. So this is the size scale we will talk about. This is cosmology which deals with these type of scales. The size of a cluster. When we do cosmology, then we consider galaxy as a point. Forget planets, forget stars. In cosmology, we will consider galaxy at a point. We talk about galaxy cluster, we talk about galaxy supercluster, we talk about the observed universe. So the age of the observed universe is 13.7 billion years. So it's around 14 billion years ago. So this creation of the universe started 14 billion years ago. Now, to study cosmology, to study astrophysics, you should know gravitational force. What is gravity? I'm sure you all have heard about gravity. Gravity is there in class 9 syllabus. You all know about gravity. What is gravity? So I'm not introducing gravity in a way which is written in textbook. Gravity is a type of force through which matter interacts. When we say matter is interacting, when the human beings interact, what we do? We talk. Interaction means we talk with each other. When the matter interacts, it exerts force over each other. What type of force it exerts? It exerts gravitational force. So the force through which the matter particles are interacting. The force through which Earth and Sun is interacting is gravitational force. The force through which the Earth and the Moon is interacting is gravitational force. Now, that's a fact. Gravity is something which exists in the universe. To explain gravity, you need theory. This is how we work in physics. We have a theory, and to explain that theory, we need something. To explain that phenomena, we need something. What happened to my white pad? Yes. So to explain gravity, we need few theories. There are many theories, 10, 15 theories to explain gravity. But the most prominent one are Newton's law of gravitation and the Einstein's general theory of relativity. Universal law of gravitation simply says if you have two objects, mass m1, mass m2, you place them at a separation r, then they will attract each other with a force, and that force is given by this expression g m1 m2 by r square. This g is a constant which we say universal gravitational constant. So Newton's law of gravity is very simple. It says if you have two masses, then these two masses will attract each other with a force which is gravitational force. And this force is proportional to the product of masses. Greater the product of mass, greater would be the force. It's inversely proportional to the square of distance between them. Means as you keep on increasing the distance, then the strength of force will decrease. Now, Newton was a genius. He gave this law. This law explained almost everything. The falling of this pen in my hand, you can explain this, the motion of this pen through universal law of gravitation. Earth is attracting this pen through gravitational force. That's why this pen is falling downwards. The famous thought experiment that the apple falls from a tree. It's falling from the tree due to gravitational force which the earth is exerting over the apple. The same law which explain the falling of this pen or the falling of apple from the tree can explain the motion of planets. It can explain the motion of moon. So it explain everything very clearly. But there are certain phenomena that Newton's law of gravitation cannot explain. There are few limitations of Newton's law of gravitation that this law cannot explain. The first one is precession of Mercury. Precession of Mercury. You know that planets revolve around the sun in elliptical orbits. The orbit is elliptical. But this orbit is not fixed. If you see Mercury, then the orbit is shifting. Although the shift is very small, some fractions of degree in hundreds of years, but there is a shift. Right after the time of Newton, astronomers have observed this shift. This we call precession of Mercury. Precession of Mercury means the orbit of Mercury keep on shifting. That's precession of Mercury. This cannot be explained using Newton's law of gravitation. That's the first limit. Newton's universal law of gravitation. Newton's law of gravitation. Then there is one more thing. Okay, what Newton say? Gravity is attractive or repulsive? What do you think? According to Newton's law of gravitation, this gravity is always attractive or it could be repulsive also. Answers. What do you think? Gravity is always attractive or it could be repulsive also? Okay. Gravitational force in day-to-day life, it's always attractive. Two masses always attract each other. They never repel. But there are certain phenomena which cannot be explained if it always attract. There are certain phenomena which can't be explained if gravity is always attractive. Newton said that gravity is always attractive. But there are few phenomena that we can't explain if we consider gravity is also always attractive. We need a theory which can say, yes, gravity is attractive and some scale it can be repulsive. To explain certain phenomena that we will do in the next 5 minutes, you need a theory which says gravity can be repulsive also. So to remove these issues with the limitations of the Newton's law of gravity, Einstein proposed a theory which is general theory of relativity. It's a beautiful theory. This theory says every gravitational force comes from the geometry. You had geometry in your class 7th, class 8, class 9, class 10th. Some of you may find it boring that, oh, geometry is something very boring thing. But the gravity that you think of comes from the geometry. That comes from the geometry of space and time. Now from now onwards, when I say space and time, consider space and time as a fabric. Time as a fabric in which we, the universe, the humans exist. It's a fabric. This fabric is the fabric of space and time. There's a fabric of space time always. It's a space time fabric. You can move forward in this space time fabric, or if you can travel at the speed of light, you can move backward in this fabric also. It's just a fabric of space and time where we exist. Our existence is in a fabric of space and time. So Einstein said that gravity is not due to mass. It's due to the curvature of this fabric. If there is no mass, then this fabric is straight. But when you have mass, you can see there is no mass, so the fabric is plane. No gravitational force, nothing. But if you have a mass, you can see from here. You can see from here. If you have a mass, heavy mass, then this heavy mass will distort this fabric. Due to this distortion, another mass will move towards itself. And that is the cause of gravity. So Einstein says gravity arises due to the very geometry of space and time. So by saying that geometry of space and time, he's saying that gravity will exist always. You have mass or not, gravity will exist always. Because gravity is something very fundamental like space and time. You can't think of a universe without space and time. So gravity is the modification in the space and time only. And who do that modification? The mass do that modification. So out of Newton's law of gravitation and Einstein's general theory of relativity, the fundamental difference is Newton says gravity arises due to the attractive force between masses. Einstein says that gravity arises due to geometry of space and time. What do you think? Which one is more fundamental, space and time or geometry? Oh, sorry, or masses? What do you think? Which one is more fundamental? Masses or the space and time? Good. Space and time is more fundamental. So general theory of relativity is more fundamental. It does not have any limitations, at least for the time. So these are the theories that we will be using. Next slide. Okay, this is an image from a Hubble telescope. So if you look at this is a real image from a Hubble telescope. These all are galaxies. These are galaxies. There are some stars also here, but this is basically images of some galaxies. These are the images of some galaxies. These are galaxies always. So this is from the Hubble Space Telescope. Hubble Space Telescope can see the galaxies and everything. Okay. Okay, now let's start the main thing of the discussion. Just a second. Now we will discuss the evolution of universe right from the Big Bang. See, everything, all matter, all radiation, all space and time, the beginning of the universe came from the Big Bang. There are many theories to explain the creation of the universe. When I say the creation of the universe, is the creation of space, is the creation of time, is the creation of matter, is the creation of radiation. There are various theories to explain this creation. The prominent one is the Big Bang. So for the next 5 minutes, we will see how Big Bang came and the universe and the evolution of universe from the Big Bang to the current time. So Big Bang, you can consider that all the universe that you have today starts from a point Yeah, that starts from a point, and that point is, so the all spaces, all time, all energy initially was within a point of some mm. Then something happened in that point, and that point explode. That explosion is known as Big Bang. And after this Big Bang, the space, time, energy, radiation, and time came into being. That was the starting point for all space and time, everything. So this is the Big Bang. From this Big Bang came matter, energy, space, and time. Everything that you have today came from the Big Bang. So this everything, the whole space time, the clusters of galaxies, everything came from Big Bang. Now, you can divide the whole evolution of the universe into two major era. Now we will do the journey from the Big Bang to the present epoch. The journey of the Big Bang to the present epoch can be divided into two major categories. One is radiation era, then the other era is the matter era. Saksham, how Big Bang happens? What was there before Big Bang? There is not any exact theory which can explain that thing. String theory has some postulates about what was there before Big Bang, how that point came into being, how the point through which the Big Bang happened, how this point came into existence. There are theories, there's a branch which is known as the string theory. String theory explains that thing. I can discuss that the era before the Big Bang at the end of the lecture. We'll discuss what happened, how these things came into being, how the point, the singularity in which the Big Bang happens, how that singularity came into being, came into existence. We'll discuss this at the end of the lecture. But when we do cosmology, we start from the Big Bang. So in Big Bang, we have two era. One is radiation era, another is the matter era. Okay, so let's discuss the radiation era first. Radiation era means after the Big Bang, there was a time scale, there was a time period where only radiation was there in the universe. This era is known for the dominance of the radiation. Like you had only gamma waves, you have only X waves, you have only cosmic waves, gamma waves only. That was the radiation era. We can further divide this radiation era into various epochs. Planck epoch, grand unified epoch, inflation, electroweak. We will discuss each and every epoch one by one. After this radiation era, okay, this is the timeline of the universe. The first epoch in the radiation era is the Planck epoch. The temperature at the time, the temperature at the Planck epoch was 10 raised power 40 Kelvin. It was just this epoch is just after the Big Bang. Just after the Big Bang, you have this Planck epoch. Immediately after the Big Bang, the universe was extremely hot. The temperature is 10 raised power 40 Kelvin. Extremely hot. There was no matter. No matter existed. There was only radiation before this epoch. Only energy before this epoch. And this is the energy that created everything. Now, you must have heard about forces, some basic forces in nature. Gravitational force, strong nuclear force, which acts inside the nucleus. The force which binds the neutron and proton together is the strong nuclear force. This is acting inside the nucleus only, strong nuclear force. Then we have weak nuclear force. This acts during radioactive decay. Then we have electromagnetic forces, like the force which attract a proton and electron, or a force which attract a north pole of the magnet and the south pole of the magnet. During the Planck epoch, all forces were unified. Means there was no difference between gravity, strong nuclear, weak nuclear, electromagnetic forces. Means the forces which holds the mass together, and the forces which hold the charge together, or the forces which act inside the nucleus, all forces were unified. And the name of that force is superforce. All forces were unified at that time during the Planck epoch. And when this Planck epoch occurs, just after the Big Bang, just immediately after the Big Bang. Now, after the Planck epoch, the next epoch came, that is known as Grand Unification epoch. In Grand Unification epoch, this gravity decouples. Means in Planck epoch, all forces were unified. Now the gravity decouples. And this happens just 10 raised to the power minus 43 seconds after the Big Bang. When I say 10 raised to the power minus 43, that means 0. Keep 43 zeros and put 1. After fractions of seconds after the Big Bang, this was Grand Unification epoch. Okay, can you compare the temperature of the Planck epoch and the Grand Unification epoch? The temperature is same, it increases or it decreases? If you can remember. Can you compare the temperature with the Planck epoch? Very good. So you people are listening. Huh? Yes, it decreases. In the Planck epoch, it was 10 raised power 40. In the Grand Unification epoch, the temperature decreases. The temperature decreases after the Grand Unification epoch. Now, the universe just after the Big Bang, the universe was very, very hot. Its temperature was 10 raised power 40 Kelvin. Now it's cooling down. Now the temperature is decreasing. After this Grand Unification epoch, so in Grand Unification epoch, gravity, the major thing that happened in this Grand Unification epoch is the decoupling of gravity. Gravity decouples. But these three forces, strong nuclear forces, weak nuclear forces, and electromagnetic forces, they are still unified during Grand Unification epoch. After this Grand Unification epoch came the next epoch. The next epoch is known as inflationary epoch. In inflationary epoch, what happens? The gravity and the electromagnetic forces decouples, both decouples. See, the temperature is further decreasing. And the inflation happens after 10 raised to the power minus 36 seconds after Big Bang. That's the next epoch. So see, sorry. Just 1 second, sorry. Just 1 second. I'm sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, I can't move it forward. I can't fast forward it. Meanwhile, it's coming back to its position. We can discuss if you have doubts up to this epoch. So we have discussed up to this inflationary epoch. So that was Planck epoch, 10 raised power 40 Kelvin, immediately after the Big Bang. Gravity decouples in Grand Unification epoch. Then yes, this is the inflationary epoch. So what happened during inflationary epoch? The size of the universe increases. Like before the inflationary epoch, the size of the universe was some only. After this inflation, the size of the universe is almost the present size. like the size of the universe increases some billions of times after this inflationary epoch. So the size of the universe is increasing it during the inflationary epoch. You can think it like from a point, the universe is of this size. And this inflationary epoch lasts for some fractions of seconds only. And in those fractions of seconds, the size of the universe increases from a point to the present size. That's the inflationary epoch. Now, during the inflationary epoch, now the ingredients are coming to life. During the inflationary epoch, the energy, after the Big Bang, we just had energy. That energy created electrons. That energy created quarks. And the energy created anti-quarks. So this is how the quark and anti-quarks came into being. Just after during the inflationary epoch, universe was cooling down. The energy created electrons. The energy created quarks. The energy created anti-quarks. So in your junior classes, you must have heard about the conservation of energy, that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, right? Have you heard about the conservation of energy? That energy can neither be created nor destroyed. But you can see here, you are creating mass, energy is converting into mass. So at this scale, at this epoch, the conservation of energy is no longer valid. The energy is getting converted into mass. So there is creation of mass, the creation of electron, the creation of the quark, the creation of anti-quark. So after inflationary epoch, the creation begins. The creation of space, time, and matter begins. Okay, good, Vidushi. Now, after the inflationary epoch, means after 10 raised power minus 32 seconds after Big Bang. See, this thing was very fast. In fractions of seconds, all epochs are over. All forces decouple. So after this inflationary epoch, we have electroweak epoch. In electroweak epoch, we have four forces: magnetic and weak. All forces have decoupled now. And see, the temperature is continuously decreasing. Then came the quark epoch. Quarks formed during this epoch. So we have 6 types of quarks and electrons. So during quark epoch, we have all ingredients for the formation of universe, for the creation of universe. We have all ingredients responsible for the creation of universe. We have quarks. These quarks can make proton. We have electrons. Protons and electrons can combine together to make atom. Through atoms, you can make molecules, you can make compounds, then you can make everything. So after 10 raised to the power minus 12 seconds after Big Bang, we have everything. We have all ingredients. But the temperature is quite high at 10 raised power 16 Kelvin. At this high temperature, it's tough for these quarks to combine. Now the temperature starts decreasing further. Now the temperature is slowly, the temperature of the universe is decreasing. Then came the hadron epoch. Temperature have decreased further, 10 raised power 10. It is the epoch at which the protons are created. The protons and neutrons are created at this epoch only. Hadron epoch. Quarks are combining. Quarks combine to form protons and neutrons. After 10 raised power minus 6 seconds after Big Bang, first proton and neutron were created. First neutron and proton were created after this epoch. So that was about the radiation era. I'm sorry again, like I can't control the speed of this. If there is anyone from the technical team, can you please help me in? Nishkarsh, if you are there, can you please help me in moving this think at a
Yeah,
faster pace.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Meanwhile, if you have, yes, Navya have a question. What are anti-quarks? Navya, in universe, we have anti-particle for every particle. You must have heard about the concept of antimatter. So for every particle, we have antiparticle. Like for electron, we have an antiparticle which is known as positron. For proton, we have antiproton. And when protons and antiprotons combine, they annihilate each other. So during the initial epochs, like during this grand unification epoch and quark epoch, matter, particle and antiparticles were created equally. The number of quarks and anti-quarks were equal at the time of this quark epoch. Then something fishy happens in the universe, and the quantity of anti-quarks decreases. Yes, after every epoch, the temperature is decreasing. So now we have anti-quarks in one line are antiparticles of quark. We have nature have created antiparticle of everything. It have created antiparticles of protons, neutrons, and everything. And yes, after every epoch, the temperature is decreasing. It's cooling down. And if it cools down, the hadrons will create. Now we are slowly moving towards the creation of matter. Radiation have already created. Now we are slowly moving towards the creation of the atom after the quark epochs. After hadron epoch, we have protons and neutrons. Next came the lepton epoch. After 1 second, lepton epochs, you have particles like electrons. In lepton epochs, you have particles like electrons. Particles like electrons were created. And one more thing, during these epochs, there were many new type of particles which we say relics in physics were also created. I'm not discussing relics because I don't have, my time is about to finish. I have to finish this thing. Relics were also created. Relics means some very strange particles, like you have magnetic monopoles. You must have heard in your physics, in your science class, that magnetic poles always exist in pairs. You have north pole and south pole together. You can't create monopoles. But during this epochs, we had monopoles. We have black holes also. Some black holes were also created during this epoch. We call them relics, but I'm not coming to relics right now. So then came the nuclear epoch. In nuclear epoch, these neutrons and protons combine and they form nucleus. They combine to form a nucleus. Then electrons came, and these electrons and nucleus combined to form a helium. Okay, Vedansh have some questions. Sir, temperature has been increasing the activation energy. So how does excess temperature does not allow quarks to form protons? See, Vedansh, due to increase in temperature, the randomness in the system increases. When you increase the temperature, when you provide heat energy to a system, the randomness increases. That randomness does not allow the particles to come close. It's a very good example. If you boil water in a container, then the water expands. Particles are moving away from each other. So high temperature, high energy does not helps in unification. It helps in breaking the system. So when you have excess temperature, quarks cannot move towards each other. See, if you have excess temperature, quarks have very high kinetic energy. Due to that very high kinetic energy, quarks will move away from each other. They will move randomly. To combine, the kinetic energy should decrease. Kinetic energy can decrease only if temperature can decrease. High temperature means high kinetic energy. Low temperature means low kinetic energy. You need low kinetic energy for the combination. If you increase the temperature, then you can make a bounded system. Your system will always be unbounded. So after inflationary epoch, now the creation of matter starts. Then we have electroweak epoch. Quark epoch. Vedansh, is it clear? High energy does not help in structure formation. High energy helps in breaking of structure. It does not create anything. High temperature. High energy means high kinetic energy means high things will move away from each other. I'm really sorry about this repetition. Now comes the matter era. Now these hadrons and electrons combines to form matter. The first particle that was created is helium. The first element that was created was helium, the basic building block of everything. In this epoch, we will see how atoms form, how galaxies form, and how stars form. Atomic epoch. It happens after 5,000, 50,000 years after the Big Bang. The temperature decreases to 3,000 Kelvin. Now protons and electrons combines to form an atom. So this is how the first atom is created. Now these atoms, after 200 million years, these are due to gravitational force, the atoms comes together and they form galaxies, galaxy clusters, stars, and planets. Okay, at this stage, okay, I should not stop it. There's one takeaway question for you. You should think why Earth rotates. You know that Earth revolves around the sun due to the gravitational force. Do you know why Earth rotates about its axis? What is the cause behind the rotation of Earth about its axis? Why Earth is rotating? You should think about this question. Why Earth rotates about its axis? So that's the matter era. In matter era, planets, stars, everything created. The first atom, helium. After helium came hydrogen. And in a star, these hydrogens fuse to form heavier elements. All heavier elements that you see in your periodic table came from the combination of these things, came from the combination of helium atoms and hydrogen atoms. These helium and hydrogen atom combines and form all the elements of the periodic table. So everything, every element that you can see is formed in the matter era. All things that you see were created during the matter era. Okay, there is no use of this slide. Okay, now we know that universe, the formation of universe is over after the matter era. Then after this matter era, there is another interesting era which we say late time era, which is the universe is currently going through that late time era. And in that late time era, the universe is expanding. Okay, tell me, have we done any other expansion earlier during the evolution of the universe? Did we discuss any other type of expansion in the universe? Right after the Big Bang, was there any expansion? Have we discussed any expansion? Yes, we have discussed one expansion. Saksham, what was the name of this expansion, if anyone can think? If you can remember, what was the name of that expansion? Just after Big Bang, the universe goes through an era of expansion. What was the name of that expansion era? Inflation, right? Inflation of epoch, yes. This inflation was right after the Big Bang. Now, after billions of years of Big Bang, universe is again in an era in which it is accelerating. This is again an expanding era. It's a type of expansion. But this expansion is not as fast as inflation. Currently, our universe is expanding. It's not just expanding, but it's accelerating. Now, the question arises is how we came to know that universe is expanding. Universe is huge. We can't observe the entire universe in our lifetime. The age of the universe is 14 billion years ago. So a very natural question that comes to mind is how we know that universe is expanding. Who is telling us that universe is expanding? The answer to this question is nature itself. Nature itself gives you the information. Nature says, I have coded everything in almost everything. Like each and everything that you can see around you. Matter particles, stars, light, photon that is coming from the Big Bang. See, photons are never lost. There were billions of photons which were emitted during the Big Bang. Those photons are still traveling, they are coming to you. Those photons have each and every information about the all epochs. If you can decode those photons, you can gather all information. Like when you see any object, what happens? How you see any object? Like if you are seeing the screen of your mobile phone or the screen of your laptop, how you see screens? How you see things? What happens is light strike an object. When light strikes an object, it's the information of that objects get encoded in the light, which we call photon, particles of light. And when that light enters in your eye, then your brain decode it and get that information. This is how you see objects. So the photon that traveled during Big Bang have every information. It have information about the grand unification era. It have information about the radiation era. It have information of the quark era. If you can decode that photon today, you can know the whole expansion history of the universe. So you just have to make efforts to decode it. And this is what we do in mathematics and physics. You try to decode those things. Universe have decoded every information in photons. Okay. So the expansion of universe was discovered by Edward Hubble. What Hubble did, Hubble observed stars in faraway galaxies. On the y-axis, he takes velocity of stars. On the x-axis, he takes the separation. And he observes a graph. He makes a graph. This graph shows that the stars which are far away are moving at a very high velocity. So from this is concluded, Hubble concluded that universe is expanding. There is one more way to check whether the universe is expanding or not, and that is the redshift. Through redshift, you can check whether the universe is expanding or not. The light that is coming from the universe is redshifted. Do you remember if something is redshifted, what does it mean? It's moving towards you or it's moving away from you? If the light coming from the universe, coming from all galaxies are redshifting, what does it mean? It's moving away from you. So the light that we observe from the galaxies, galaxy clusters are continuously redshifting. This redshifting tells you that universe is expanding. And this expansion is accelerating. Accelerating means the rate of expansion is continuously increasing. This rate of acceleration was discovered in 1998 by Rees. So I'm not going into the detail of this whole thing, but this discovery that the universe is accelerating is very recent. It was done in 1998 by it. There were few good mathematicians from India who contributed in this discovery. Okay, so that's universe. Now universe, the formation of the universe ends. Now let's see what the total energy budget of the universe. The total energy budget of the universe have a suction, it's expanding from all points, expanding in all directions. So this is the total energy budget of the universe. In the universe, we have around 4% of baryons. We have around 4% of baryons. Baryons are the ordinary matter that you find around yourself. That's baryon. The ordinary matter that you found around yourself is baryon. So all stars or planets or human beings or animals or galaxies are just the 4% of the observed universe. The rest 23% is the dark matter. The rest 73% is the dark energy. Okay, so I think I should stop now. I had only 1 hour. I'm already exceeded by some 5 to 6 minutes. There were few more slides about dark energy and dark matter. I'm stopping right now, but you can Google or you can join our free workshop to know what is dark energy, what is dark matter, and how we can study about them.
Sir, you can stretch it for 5 to 10 minutes if you want it.
So I'm not going to detail into dark energy and dark matter. So these are few experiments through which we know how the universe is expanding. This is Hubble telescope. This is CMB data. This is WMAP. So these are the experiments through which we came to know about the expansion of the universe. We still have some open questions like what is dark energy? We need physics needs some really fresh brains and some very innovative way of thinking to answer these questions like what is dark energy, then we still have some open questions like parallel universe. Maybe someone from you can answer these questions. These are still open questions in cosmology and physics. What is dark energy? Like the 75% of the universe is unknown. We don't know what is it in it. These are open questions in cosmology. Okay, so that's it. I should stop here. Thank you. If you have any doubts, we can discuss it right now. No, Debit. Dark matter and dark energy are totally different things. Dark matter and dark energy are totally different. Dark matter is a matter and dark energy is something which is not yet known. Dark matter is a type of matter, but dark energy is something that we yet don't know what is it. But it exists. It is accelerating the universe actually. Okay, just give me 1 minute. See, in LearningView, we train students is an online edtech as as already being mentioned. In LearningView, we train you for your school exams as well as for the future endeavor. Like we take care of your future school exams, your competitive exams, and things like these. Along with your school exams and competitive exams, we train you in astrophysics, we train you in robotics, we train you in machine learning and artificial intelligence. We also prepare you for UPSC exams right from your class 9th. Also, if you need more lectures, you want to study this topic more, you can just log on to our website. These courses are absolutely free. There are 15, 20 sessions, 20 lectures in that course. There's a lot more to learn. There are lectures on planets, there are lectures on dark energy, supernova, black holes, and all things. We also have lectures on robotics, how robots work. We also have lectures on machine learning and AI, artificial intelligence. You must have heard about. So if you want, you can join. You can just log on to our website and can join our free courses. These courses are absolutely free. We don't charge for these courses. Anyways, thank you. I think I should stop now. If you have doubts, we can discuss. Like I'm unmuting you. If you want to discuss, the mic is open. We can discuss it right now. The session is over. You can, if you want, you can leave. If you have any doubts, we can discuss it right now. Mics are open. You can use your mics. Yes, Saksham. Saksham, before the universe, there was nothing. As far as the physics knows. See, this was the point in which Big Bangs happens. In theoretical physics, in mathematics, we know what happened after this Big Bang. We know what happened after the Big Bang. But what was there before Big Bang? Till now, there is no concrete theory which can explain it. What was before Big Bang? They are a speculation. There is a branch which we call string theory. String theory deals with these type of questions. But to be very honest, there is not a single concrete theory which can tell you what was before Big Bang and why Big Bang happens. We just know what happens after Big Bang. That we can discuss. More doubts? You can even use your mics. We can have a good discussion if you want. Yes, Shraddha. Shraddha, that's the same thing I was saying. In physics, in theoretical physics, in cosmology, we still don't know what was their Big Bang and why it had happened. Who created that particle which have all energy? I think religion have answer, but not physics till now. There are branches which try to answer these things like string theory. We have quantum gravitation theories, but to be very honest, there is not a single exact theory which can explain from where that point came or what was there before Big Bang. More questions? Maybe you can find out. Huh? Do you know PhD? Maybe you can find out what was there before Big Bang. These are open questions. Navya. I can't say it's 100% true, but yes, the observations shows at a very high confidence level that this is true. Almost all observations that we have, the observations from the Planck, the observations from the WMAP, all observation shows favors the Big Bang theory. All observation shows. Maybe after a few years, you can give a theory which is better than Big Bang. But remember, there is nothing like 100%. I can say this is true up to 95%, but there are always some error bars. That's why I'm saying it's an open, we have a number of open questions. Yes, quantum physics. See, in cosmology, we use everything. We use thermodynamics, we also use quantum, we use string theory, we use GTR. We also use quantum cosmology. That's the branch. There's a new branch which is developing quantum cosmology. Basically, quantum cosmology is something which take care of this things, Big Bang, what was there before Big Bang and things. Yes, we use quantum physics in cosmology. Debjit, yes, it could be. We are currently expanding. So there could be an epoch which some says Big Rip. Big Rip means everything will, universe will explode and everything will be lost. That's Big Rip. Got it? It's because when the size increases, then the temperature decreases. Just 1 second. I'm in my writing. When the size increases, usually the temperature decreases. Temperature is inversely proportional to the size. When you expand anything, then the temperature is decreased. Just a second. Temperature decreases, not increases. There's one more thing. See, it's if temperature increases, then there would be no creation of matter. The creation of matter was possible only due to the decrease in temperature. At a very high temperature, hadrons and electrons cannot combine to form something. Saksham, in a textbook, it says a gravity is right to. How could gravity exist? Because Saksham, what we read is Newton's theory of gravitation. Newton's theory says that gravity is always due to mass. But it can exist, but it is due to the curvature of space and time. So you usually study Newton's law of gravitation. That's why you study this, that gravity is always attractive. But when you do GTR, general theory of relativity, gravity could be anything. Athar, sir, is antimatter found? Yes, Athar, people created antimatter in laboratory also. There is a good, nice movie, Angel and Demon. So in that movie, it's shown that antimatter do exist. Yes, antimatter exists. But again, it's an open question that in the starting of universe, matter and antimatter were an equal amount. But now we have matter and don't have antimatter. In general, we don't have antimatter like around us. We have matter only. Why the antimatter gets lost? We don't have equal amount of matter and antimatter today. It's again an open question in cosmology and physics. There's so much to do in cosmology right now. Will the near epoch happens due to the current increase in temperature? No, mother. The near epoch happens due to the dark energy. Earlier, the universe was matter dominated. It was dominated by the matter. But now the matter is dominated by dark energy. It's the dark energy which is causing the current expansion. The current epoch that we have is matter dominated. Currently, we have, earlier it was matter dominated. Currently, we have dark energy dominated epoch. Dark energy is repulsive. This is increasing the size of the universe. So your question, what is responsible for this epoch? The epoch of acceleration is dark energy. Very in the near time, suddenly the dark energy, the amount of dark energy overtakes that of matter. And dark energy is repulsive, so it's increasing. The reason is dark energy. Vedant, so just like you mentioned about new epochs, so is there possibility that this question can lead to formation of new universe? Yes, Vedant, it can always happen. But there's no data to support this to say yes or no. So I can say yes, there is a possibility. In physics, we rely on data. So there is no data to the present time, which can say that there could be a big rip or there is possibility of any other universe. So due to the unavailability of data? I can say, yeah, it can be possible or it can't be. It's again an open question. Devajit, sir, is it true that black holes also bend time like us? Yes, Devajit, black holes not just bend time, black holes basically slow down the time. Near a very heavy object, the time slows down. So the time slows down near pyramids. It slows down near the black hole. There was one movie, Interstellar, I guess. That was Interstellar, na, in which they do time travel. Yes, it was Interstellar. Yes, that was true. Near a black hole, time stops. At the center of the black hole, there is a singularity. Theoretically, if you can travel up to the center of the black hole, then the time would literally stop there. So time gets slowed down near a very heavy object. Madhav says, as the scientists have recently discovered the day of the Earth is decreasing by some seconds and of the acceleration of the universe. No, Madhav, that's not due to the acceleration of the universe. That's some astrophysical phenomena. The acceleration of the universe is on a very large scale. It does not affect the Earth. Just 1 second, 1 second. Okay, I have some other questions. I'm taking Madhav. Okay, I have few other questions. Karthik is saying, sir, what we are talking about. No, Karthik. Dark energy is a type of energy which is causing the acceleration of the universe. Karthik, are you there in the class? Yes, Karthik is there. Karthik Negi. No, Karthik left. Okay. Yes, Raghav, we are using the energy from the dark energy in the dark matter, but we don't know yet that what is dark energy and what is dark matter. Atharv, sir, how scientists calculate the age of the Earth on a celestial object? A good question, Atharv. We calculate the age of the universe through, we have two ways to observe the age of the universe. First method is we calculate the value of Hubble constant. Hubble constant basically shows the expansion of the rate of expansion of the universe. Using the Hubble constant, we can calculate the age of the universe. Another method is by looking at the stars. Stars were formed just after a few thousand years of the Big Bang. By studying the stars, we can study the age of the star. By studying the age of the star, we can estimate the age of the universe. The exact method, Atharv, is the Hubble constant. Hubble constant measure the rate of expansion. Through Hubble constant, we can measure the age of the universe. Gauri, have one question. Why is universe expanding? Gauri, I can tell you who is the universe expanding to the dark energy. We have 75% of dark energy in the universe, and that dark energy offer repulsive force. So due to that repulsive force, the universe is currently expanding. It's due to dark energy, Gauri. The answer is dark energy. Universe is expanding due to dark energy. We have 75% dark energy. Can the particles be accelerated by humans? Which particles are you talking about, Devjit? About what particles you're talking about? Acceleration means increasing the velocity, Devjit. If I take this pen, the velocity of the pen is 0. If I throw this pen, it accelerates. But acceleration simply means we can increase. Acceleration means changing the velocity. Increasing the velocity is acceleration. So as a human, I can accelerate a point object, I can throw it, its velocity increases, it accelerates. But if you are talking about, Devjit, the acceleration of the universe, then we humans are too small to contribute in the expansion of the universe. We can study, we can observe, we can calculate, but yes, we can't contribute that expansion. That's on a cosmological scale. Atharv, as I said, when we do physics, we always write things with the error bars. So I can't say it's 100% accurate. But yes, it's accurate up to 95% of accuracy. Statistically, we say it's accurate up to 7 sigma. Means the accuracy is 95, 98%. But yes, there are error bars. There are always error bars in the calculation of the age of the Earth, in the calculation of the age of the universe, in the calculation of the size of the universe. There are always error bars. 2%, 3% error bars are there. And this is where the scope exists. That's the scope for the next generation to decrease the error bars. If people like you can decrease the error bars. Huh? More questions, more discussions. Nebulae. Nebulae are the factory of stars. Just 1 second. Huh? Just 1 second. Okay, there is one question from Raghav Negi. Raghav Negi is asking, sir, can we say that the universe will die or be? Raghav, universe can die or be. Maybe, like we don't yet have any observation which can say that universe will die or not. But yes, it can be. It can die. Universe can die out. Saksham is asking what are nebulae. Saksham, nebulae are, you can say these are the factories where stars are made. Stars are created inside a nebula. I have one very interesting lecture on nebulae, where we can see actually how the stars are produced in a nebula. In nebula, you have stars, factory of stars, you can say. Now, the dense gravitational structure where stars are formed, that's nebula. You can log in and just send us a request if you want to join these courses. So we can discuss that thing in nebula. So as you ask, what are nebulae? Nebulae are the factories of stars. These are the regions of universe where stars are formed. Laksh, okay, I'm just having some more questions coming. Just 1 minute. Samriddhi is asking that the universe will die or be. Okay, this is over. And dark energy may even be the pressure or force that only big mass around the universe stand, for example. Karthik, that dark energy is the energy which is accelerating the space and time, which is expanding the space and time. That force is not directly acting over the earth. I think that's your big mass or no, everything. Like everything is in this space time, Karthik. Okay, that's a very good question from Karthik. Karthik is asking if dark energy is exerting a pressure, does only big masses can withstand that pressure? See, what happens is this expansion is in the expansion of space-time itself. So there is no pressure on anything. The pressure comes when an object tries to be at rest and another one is forcing it to expand. The whole space-time in which our universe exists, that space-time is expanding. That space-time is expanding. So, Karthik. There's one question like, is it true that someday black hole will eat up the whole universe because of its strong gravitational force? No, not exactly. Like there is no evidence for this thing. Like black hole can eat up the whole universe. Although the gravitational force of the black hole is strong, but that is within a region only. Like the universe is huge. Black holes cannot exert gravitational force on the entire universe. Even the center of our own galaxy, the center of Milky Way have a black hole. But see, that black hole is not attracting us. That black hole is not attracting Earth. So I don't think that it can be that black hole. I don't think that black hole can eat up the universe. We have a question from Laksha. He says, sir, in black holes, time stops in white holes, time goes fast. No, Lakshya. No. The white holes are not like the opposite of black holes. So no. Time does not move fast in a white hole. No. In black hole, not just in black hole, if you have a heavier mass, near that heavier mass, time slows down. Near the pyramids of Egypt, that time slows down. Okay, I have plenty of questions. One is from just a second. The next question is from Samriddhi. She's saying, "Sir, does universe send us message or is law of attraction true?" Samriddhi, I think yes. That's a philosophical question. I think yes. Universe is sending us a message. It's saying that yes, it's sending some message to us, but that's a philosophical question. I don't know how to answer this thing. Laws of attractions are true. I truly believe it. That's true. There's a lot of things that we can't we yet don't know. The data is coming. So Simriddhi, to be very honest, the philosophical question. I know it's true, but I don't know how to answer this thing. The universe is continuously interacting with us. It's interacting in the form of photons, it's interacting in the form of radiation. It's interacting in the form of dark energy, but I don't have any physical theory, any law, any hypothesis to support this evidence. But yes, I believe it happens. Galaxy look stationary, so why scientists say that they rotates? Harship, the galaxies are rotating. They are rotating, and when we see the, I have shown one picture here. See, I can show you that galaxies are actually rotating. I've shown you a picture. These curves, these are galaxies, and these curves basically shows that they are rotating. They're actually rotating. We have another question. Okay. Another question from Lakshay. We have discussed Saksham, sir, do stars revolve around galaxies? There's some stars which can revolve around galaxies, but not all. There's some stars which can revolve around galaxies, Saksham, but not all. Lakshay, if universe explodes, is there any possibility there will be another Big Bang? As I said, Lakshay, yeah, it may be or may not be. It may be. Yeah, there can be a possibility of another Big Bang. There can be another Big Bang. Navya, so do white holes exist? If yes, we do know about them. I'm just coming to your question, Navya. Everything that present in the universe is moving. Yes, Shraddha, everything is moving, but that depends who is observing it. Everything is moving. Everything is moving. Everything is expanding. Just few more questions I'm asking. Navya, I think, have a question. Do white hole exist? Navya, white holes are still a theoretical concept. General theory of relativity says that yes, white holes may exist, but there is no experimental proof of that thing. White holes exist. Theoretically, they exist, but we don't have any data of white holes. Navya, the difference between white hole and black hole is very small. In a black hole, radiation and matter cannot escape out of the black hole, but can enter in the black hole. But when you talk about white hole, objects cannot enter a white hole, but it can emit out of a white hole. So that's the difference between a white hole and black hole. I'm explaining again. First of all, thing, white holes exist theoretically only. We don't have any observation, any experimental proof for white holes. But Newton's general theory of relativity says, yeah, they can be possible. So maybe after a few years, someone can detect a white hole. But the theoretical difference between white hole and black hole is, in a black hole, objects can enter from the outside, but they cannot move out of the black hole. Like black hole can absorb matter but cannot emit matter. It can absorb radiation but cannot emit radiation. On the other hand, matter cannot enter in a white hole, but it can escape a white hole. But till now, no one have observed a white hole. Navya, when a white hole formed, then it will form from some energy inside, energy trapped in the white hole. So that energy can give rise to particles, antiparticles, radiation and everything. So that radiation can move out of it. But I said still there is no experimental or observational evidence of the white hole.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I'm Kartikan. Sir, if we say logically, ma'am, sir, how after when we can say that statement remains that after a star dies, then only black hole forms. And black hole gravitational force is so much powerful that even light cannot explain. But sir, my question remains gravity. Sir, how black hole is generating such gravity?
Okay. See, gravity depends upon mass, right? Gravitational force is directly proportional to mass. So when a star dies, what happens is this star collapse. The star is collapsing. You can take, say you have a star, the size of the star is, let's say 10 raised power 10 kilometer. When it collapsed to a size of, let's say 10 raised power 3 kilometer. In this very small region, you have huge amount of mass. So here it have enormous amount of mass. That heavy mass will generate very heavy gravitational field. One thing. Like second thing is, not every star when it die get converted into black hole. There are certain stars which exceeds Chandrasekhar mass limit. That's the limit on the mass of the star, which can be converted into a black hole. The first question is, not every star get converted into black hole, or there are few types of stars which exceeds a mass limit, Chandrasekhar mass limit we say, that can be converted into a black hole. Second thing is, why black hole have so strong gravitational force? It's due to their masses. They have huge masses in a very small, in a very, very dense region. If I give you the example, see, the density of the black hole is comparable to the density of nucleus. If you take the nucleus of almost all the elements of the earth, then the size of that nucleus will be the size of the test tube. Like if you gather all the elements of the earth, then you can put all the nucleus of all the elements. You can put all those nucleus of all the elements of earth in a test tube only. The density of the test tube will be huge. Mass will be huge. That small test tube will generate very strong gravitational field. So the black holes generate very strong gravitational field due to their huge masses in small volume. But not all stars converted into black holes. Only few stars converted into black holes.
Thank you, sir, for explaining my doubt. And
Okay.
sir, there are two more doubts that I am having.
Yes.
Sir, why star? Why is just a star? I'm just talking in here about black hole only. So why star only has a limited amount of gas, helium? I think so. We say that. And I have read a case. I don't remember it clearly, but I read it in a book. So that one side of black hole can be also connected to the other side. Means two sides there can be black hole. But when they kind of shrink, there is a break. This plate, I think so. There is a kind of plate. I read it in a book. I'm not sure about that. Sir, can you explain that?
Okay, see, what happens is, there are mergers of black holes, you are right. Recently, there was an experiment. I'm just writing you. LIGO, which detected gravitational waves. I think LIGO detected gravitational waves in 3 years back. And these gravitational waves are coming from two stars, two black holes which are merging. So yes, it's true that two black holes can merge. Basically, what happens is, when you have two black holes, very strong gravitational force. Due to that strong gravitational force, they can move close to each other. They keep on revolving around each other, and then an instant came when these two black holes merge and form a single black hole. But when this happens, this is a very, very luminous event in the universe. When this happens, it bursts. Like when two black holes combine, they merge into a single black hole, and due to this merger, enormous amount of energy is released. And the disk that you were talking about is basically that disk have nothing to do with the creation of the two black holes. Basically, when you have a black hole, you have regions around the black hole. You have this black hole, you have regions around the black holes, disk shaped regions. In these regions, for different regions, there are different densities of the black holes. From some regions, radiation can escape, and there are other regions, radiation cannot escape. So first of all, this disk and the merger of black holes are two different concepts. The next, you were talking about these black holes, and black holes are converted by something. This is what we call wormholes. Through these wormholes, you can move from one space-time to the another. But again, wormholes are just a theoretical concept. They don't yet have mathematical proof as far as I know. And forget about the experimental proof. There are no observations for the wormhole. So Karthik, I think you asked many questions. I have answered some of them. Something is left, we can discuss it again.
The gas I was talking about, sir. Why the stars, when the formation of the black hole comes, at the time that there is a gas that finishes off. After that, star uses the rest of the remaining gas and just transforms into a black hole after a big explosion. So, sir, can you tell why the stars have that limited gas?
Okay, see, Karthik, whenever you make anything, whenever you make any system, you can make any system with only a limited amount of matter, right? You can make any system with only a limited amount of matter. You can't make a system having infinite amount of matter. Everything have limited amount. So when a star formed during that matter domination era, this star will have a definite matter, and that definite amount of matter is the gas inside the star. So what happens is, in a star, two processes are happening simultaneously. The one process is the gravitational field of the star. This gravitational field is trying to collapse the star because gravity is attractive, at least at the scale of a star. Then to balance this, Karthik, just tell me, if there is nothing inside the star which can balance then gravity, then what will happen to the star? Star will remain as it is, or it will collapse?
It will collapse.
It will collapse. So there are gases inside the stars which are burning. Fusion reactions actually are happening inside the stars. And these fusion reactions is generating a pressure. This pressure is balancing the gravitational pull. These are fusion reactions. So what happens? Helium combines and form heavy elements. The fusion reactions keep on continuing until you form iron. After iron, fusion reaction stops. There is no fusion reaction after iron. It stops literally. And once fusion stops, this pressure, which was balancing the gravity, this pressure withdraws. Now this gravity collapses the star, and due to this collapse, if the star have a mass which exceeds Chandrasekhar mass limit, then that star can be converted into a black hole. Yes, Lakshay, everything, the age of everything is limited. The sun also have a limited age. There will come a time when this will collapse. But I have to stop now. I have my another session. You still have doubt, you can just I'm just sharing an email ID if you want.
So just before you leave, sir, I have one last question, sir. So, sir, there are some planets which scientists specifically say that they are tidally locked. There are some planets, people say that they're tidally locked, that they cannot move from day to night. One specific site cannot move day to night, another night to day. So why is it so?
Why days and night happens, Karthik? Days and night happens because of the rotation of the earth, right? Earth is rotating. When one face of the Earth is facing the sun, then it becomes day, and then and on the other face it becomes night, right? But if you have an exoplanet, this exoplanet is in a place there are no stars nearby. If exoplanet is in a space when there are no stars, I don't know which exact exoplanet you're talking about, but if you have an exoplanet where you don't have any star around, then there will always be night. And if you have an exoplanet where you have a sun to the left hand side and so sun to the right hand side, then we'd always have day. That's one explanation.
Sir, I also had a doubt. So it's a small doubt.
Yes,
So
yes,
what
yes,
is present in black hole and white hole?
Okay. Harshdeep, in black hole, we have matter, baryons basically. So these baryons could be iron. You can say the iron heavy elements are inside the black holes. That's it. Matter is inside the black hole. But there is one thing inside the black hole which we call singularity at the center of the black hole. Honestly, physics don't yet know what is there inside the singularity. There are hypotheses, there are theories, but there is no exact theory for the singularity of the black hole. And matter inside the black hole are baryons.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, if you still have doubts, you can do one thing. You can just log on to LearningView, you can sign up, and we will allot you the batches for these astrophysics courses. Actually, I have to leave. I have some another session somewhere.
Is it free?
Yes, it's free. Yes, it's absolutely free. You can join it.
Thank you,
There's
sir.
no charge. You can join it.
Yeah, sure.
Arohi, yes, there can be aliens. There can be aliens, right? I can't say with the surety that they are not present. Like if humans are present, then they can also be present. They can be present. Yes.